Hi, how are you? Let's begin this video with the obligatory pitch for fame, fortune, and social media followers. In other words, if you like what you find on this channel, salvationbygrace.org, then subscribe. Push the button right below this video, and if you push the bell button next to it, then you'll be informed whenever new videos are put up. Okay, with that being said, let's begin this video. Roll the graphics. The history of Christianity is full of phraseology, terminology, and even passages taken from the Bible that have been repeated so many times that they've just become part of the Christian lexicon. But in taking those biblical phrases out of their natural context, oftentimes those phrases are used in ways that the original writers did not intend. And really, that's what today's short video is about. It's about the phrase, "Let the redeemed of the Lord say so." If you've been in church any length of time, at some point you've heard somebody say, "Let the redeemed of the Lord say so." In fact, the common interpretation is that what that means is that people who have been redeemed of the Lord ought to admit it, ought to say out loud, actually ought to tell people that they have been redeemed of the Lord. They ought to say so. In fact, there are commentaries that actually say that. There are even songs that say that, like this. Or even this jaunty little ditty.
Let the redeemed of the Lord say so. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so. Say so.
You get the idea. Let the redeemed of the Lord admit that they are redeemed. But that's not really what the original psalmist was trying to say when utilizing the phrase, "Let the redeemed of the Lord say something." That phrase comes from Psalm 107, verse 2, and in fact, if you go to Bible Hub on the internet and look at the first couple of translations of the phrase, you'll find the New International Version saying, "Let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story, those he redeemed from the hand of the foe." So they are encouraging some kind of personal testimony that because we've been redeemed of the Lord, we ought to admit it. And they are interpreting that phrase within a very modern New Testament Christian context, and using the word redeemed to mean redeemed from all our sin, to have been bought off the market of sin and therefore be saved. That sort of redemption is what they're referring to, but that is not the sort of redemption that was in the mind of the original psalmist. The New Living Translation goes all the way to, "Has the Lord redeemed you? Then speak out. Tell others he has redeemed you from your enemies." So those who have been redeemed of the Lord are apparently supposed to tell people, "I've been redeemed of the Lord." But again, if you look at the context, it's very, very different. I am a context wonk, and I know sometimes on this particular topic I can begin to sound like a broken record. But the reason that we keep talking about the importance of context is because the same errors keep getting made based on people not paying attention to the context. Even when I was a young kid in school, I mean grammar school, young, I was taught that the way to understand the meaning of a word that I didn't know was to take a look at the context, because the context would provide clues and indications as to the meaning of that particular word. As I got older, when I would see phraseology, larger terminology that I didn't understand, even arguments that I didn't fully understand or comprehend, I was taught to look at the context. What is the flow of the writer's argument? What is he trying to prove or establish? And then you have the clues contextually to begin to understand the phraseology that you don't understand. Context is the way to best understand meaning. And when we look at the phrase, "Let the redeemed of the Lord say so," it has an actual meaning that you can deduce from the actual context. So let's read that phrase in its context, and then we'll talk about what it actually means, because it actually means something really, really important. This is what Psalm 107 actually says. "Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his loving kindness is everlasting. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, whom he has redeemed from the hand of the adversary, and gathered from the lands, from the east and from the west, from the north and from the south. They wandered in the wilderness, in a deserted region. They did not find a way to an inhabited city. They were hungry and thirsty. Their soul fainted within them. Then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble. He delivered them from all their distresses. He led them also by a straight way to an inhabited city. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his loving kindness and for his wonders to the sons of men. For he has satisfied the thirsty soul, and the hungry soul he has filled with what is good." The first thing we ought to understand and recognize is that the thing that the redeemed of the Lord ought to say is that he is good. Give thanks to the Lord and say that he is good. Far from being a verse that advocates that people talk about their state, I'm redeemed, and therefore I need to tell people how redeemed I am, and I need to sing songs about it. Instead, what we're told to actually declare is that the Lord is good, and that his loving kindness is everlasting. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so. Now you'll notice that this word "so" is in italics. That means it's added by the translator in the hope of bringing clarity to the phraseology. But it's not actually in the original Hebrew text. What we're told is that the redeemed of the Lord are to declare something. They are to say something. And what they are to say is thanksgiving to the Lord, because he is good. His loving kindness is everlasting. Let the redeemed of the Lord say. This was written at a particular time for and to a particular people who actually had undergone the redemption of God. Israel had been brought out of Egypt, and therefore they were redeemed of the Lord. That's the language that the Bible uses, that God has redeemed Israel. So Israel, the redeemed people who were brought out of Egypt back to their own promised land, and in fact, Judah, who were taken into the Babylonian captivity and then brought back to their promised land. In each of those cases, God refers to that as a redemption, as he brings them back to what he has promised them. They are then the redeemed of the Lord that the original writer is referring to. And given the conditions that they lived in, and given the wandering that they did, sometimes for 40 years in the wilderness, then once they did come to a place where they were settled, once they did come to a place of habitation, then in fact they were to give thanks to the Lord and to declare that his loving kindness was everlasting. That is what the redeemed of the Lord are supposed to say. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his loving kindness is everlasting. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, whom he has redeemed from the hand of the adversary. And that's mighty good advice. Once again, God gets all the glory when the redeemed of the Lord say things. The redeemed of the Lord don't want to talk about themselves, don't want to sing songs or write commentaries about themselves. They want to talk about God and what God has done in redeeming them. And then the redeemed are to say how good God is. Okay, I hope that cleared that up. And I guarantee that sometime soon you're going to walk into a church and you're going to hear someone say or sing or declare, "Let the redeemed of the Lord say so." And you'll know the truth. Let the redeemed of the Lord say that God is really, really good. Having said all that, I also have to say that sometimes I do appreciate the alternate readings of the Bible. Sometimes people read the Bible in ways that I just don't comprehend. For instance, I was in Los Angeles years ago, listening to a preacher on the radio late night. He was one of the preachers who had a reader who would read a text and then the preacher would comment on it. And he was commenting that even God did not know who was currently in heaven. And his text was, "Our Father, who art in heaven." That's absolutely true, not a word of a lie. That occurred. On the other hand, once upon a time I heard an alternate reading of Psalm 107, verse 2, that I did kind of enjoy. My friend Elder Ward was reading that verse and in teaching his congregation how to deal with the troubles of this life, the difficulties and the unforeseen events that seem to crop up so often. He said, "Let the redeemed of the Lord say, so?" If you understand that God is completely sovereign over the events of this world, then rather than get upset, rather than get forlorn, get depressed, and worry that somehow the world is getting so bad that it's worrisome to you, instead you ought to realize that God has this in his hand the same way he has today and tomorrow in his hand. And so it's not a bad thing every once in a while for those of us who are the redeemed of the Lord to look at the world and say, so?